Hi, it's Amanda DiVito Parle. Welcome to my podcast, At the Kitchen Table, where we will guide, inspire, and connect. I started down this little path to do this. It started as kind of like a gratitude tour. Well, you know I like to talk.
Yeah.
And so then Lana was like, you should just talk. And then I was like, well, what will I talk about? And she said, well, you'll talk about all the people who've influenced your life and all the ways that that has impacted you and how you've gotten to this place in your life and this place of success and, gratitude. And so this was a way for me to sort of go back and honor the mentors, honor a lot of people who sort of made an impact in my life, and then to look ahead to just find a new path to inspire others with conversation, mostly about entrepreneurship and business ownership and things we know a thing or two about. And so that's sort of how it started. And so I wanted to bring the two of you on. So I'm here with Jerry Golden, who is my dad's longtime business partner, and my dad, Joe DiVito. So welcome to At the Kitchen Table. And I'm Amanda DiVito, your host. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. And I just, the three of us could kick stuff around for hours, which we've spent a career doing. I'm curious, how did you end up in business? And Dad, I'll have you go first and talk just a little about your business path and how you got from here to where we're at today, but the short version of your entrepreneurial version.
The short version, is that less than 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, like 2 minutes, you said.
2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I must have started at a very young age because that's the reason I left Chicago to go into business myself. And I went to electrical contracting business. I always enjoyed working for people, other people. But there was just something in me that said I needed to do this. And I was driven, literally driven.
Internally.
Yes, to want to do this. And that's why we left Chicago. And I started an electrical contracting business. I was an electrician by trade, and like I tell people, a contractor by design. And so I started that business. I sold it 10 years later. And then a good friend of mine said, come on down to Denver, and we did, and I worked for him for 6 years, kind of reorganizing his business. That was Richard Gas Electric. Right. And then Mom said she wanted to go into real estate. And I said, okay. So we went to a Century 21 career night, and I signed up, and she didn't. I was signing up to support her. And all of a sudden... And so I said, I think I'm going to give this a try. I told her to go into real estate, and she said she wanted her to do it. And so I signed up. I took the career path, and all of a sudden said, I'm going to do this real estate thing.
Do you remember how old you were and how old were your kids at the time?
Oh, my God. No, I don't remember how old. Well, it was 1983, and I was born in 45, so I was 39. 39 years old. My kids were just munchkin. Well, my kids were like your age. Your kids' age.
My kids' age, right. Yeah, little. And so it took a leap of faith is the point.
It took a tremendous leap of faith because I didn't know about the real estate. And when I did it, Mom kept saying, you should go back into the electrical contracting business. I said, no, honey, I'm going to do this thing. And I did this thing.
She was motivated differently than you.
Mom is motivated much differently.
Jerry, you have a similar but different path
totally.
into entrepreneurship, but tell us a little about how you got started.
Well, I was an art major in school, so that by nature they're just kind of independent,
free thinking,
weird people sometimes.
Creative.
And I married an art student, and so we came out here, and I did art for a while. I metal sculptures. And then started having kids and making money 1 month and none for 3 months, and money I need something steadier. So I got a job working in music, and then I got a job working for a mining company, just kind of to put money and food on the table and stuff. And then one day my brother and I were having lunch, and I was frustrated with the corporate kind of thing. I was working for a big mining company at the time. And he said he went skiing. And he's a golfer, and he loves, and he's actually pretty good.
This is John?
This is John, yeah. He won the Colorado Amateur 1 year and stuff. He's played in the U.S. Open. He's like a good golfer.
Yeah. Good golfer.
Way better than I am.
Yeah.
And
us. Way better than us.
You guys are a bunch of hacks, honestly.
Anyway, he said, I was videotaping. This was in the early 80s, and videotaping was just kind of coming around.
Yeah.
And somebody came up to me and says, well, how much do you charge? And he says, no, that's my family. I don't charge anything. And so he let it go. And then a little bit later, someone else came up and said, hey, can I hire you to videotape us and skiing? And he says, no, I don't do that. So we're having lunch. He says, so there may be an opportunity here. So we kicked it around. I said, well, if it's going to work anywhere, it's going to work in Vail. So we contacted the Vail, at the time it was Vail Associates, and got talking to them. And they said, well, we were talking to a guy, and let's start, so if you guys want to be interested. So we did. We started a videotaping company up in Vail, videotaping skiers. Well, we teamed up with another guy, a guy named George Sedlak, who's a good friend, and he was more in the broadcast production side. So he would coordinate the logistics of when ESPN or CBS Sports came in and did an event. He would put the crews together and do all the upfront logistics coordination for these production companies. So it was a good match. He wanted to do that. We wanted to do the retail on mountain stuff. So we did. And it took off, and we did well for a while. And then we sold the business 15 years later. And then we, unfortunately, were not wise in our decisions of who to sell it to, and the guy ended up going bankrupt, and we got screwed, basically. Then I had met this guy years earlier. In the mid-'80s, I was going to Vail, my wife was we lived in the mountains, and where we live over by Idaho Springs in Central City. So I go one way, she go the other, and I said, well, we should get a place in Denver just to have, so that if you get stuck in a snowstorm. And a neighbor was a neighbor of you guys, well, you were a little kid.
Matt and Nancy McDevitt.
The McDevitt.
Well, I have that house for sale right now.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
But she grew up in my hometown back in New York,
Yeah.
and we went to college together. So, and she said, I got this neighbor, a guy named Joe DiVito, who says the market's crazy now. You can buy a condo for $10,000. It's like, come on. So my wife Martha calls Joe and says, hey, we're friends with Nancy, and she said, we can buy a house or a condo, a townhome or something for $10,000. And Joe's like, well, maybe not $10,000, but we'll see what we can do. Well, sure enough, we end up finding a place for $9,500, and that's how I met Joe. So we bought this place, and we kept it for 5 or 6 years, and then we ended up selling it at a pretty good profit, actually. Yeah. And so then when I later sold my other business, I'm like, I was going to kind of retire early, but all of a sudden we didn't have any money because we got screwed. And so I got to get a job. And it's like, oh, what about real estate? So I called Joe.
Yeah.
And that's what is so good, because whenever I thought real estate, for some reason, Joe DiVito came into my mind.
Yeah.
Even though he's a great human being, a good humanitarian, does a lot of great stuff, but you always think real estate when you think of Joe, which you have.
I think a lot of people do, and I think there's this brand building that happened throughout the years, and that he had so associated himself in your mind with real estate, right? And so
anyway, that's
so
how
there was
we
this
met.
decision to partner. That was in 2000?
It was right around 2000.
Yeah.
So you guys make this decision to partner, which was a new concept in real estate.
Yeah.
This idea of building a team, because prior to that, real estate was this, sole proprietor business, essentially. You worked for a brokerage house. They took half of everything you made. The individual agent just did the sales, split half the money with the broker, and that was that. But this idea that you could build a team inside the company, I think RE/MAX, to be fair, was probably on some of the cutting edge of that. But then how did you come to this idea to partner to build a team that was rare at the time?
Well, ironically, the word team was never used. Yeah. I despise.
Why didn't you like it?
I despise team because it kind of meant that somebody was the boss and these other guys were players.
Captain, yeah.
And that was never my philosophy. My philosophy was partners. And so we partnered. It wasn't a team. It was a partner effort.
Well, and I think looking back, right, you had each had these unique leadership and entrepreneurial roles. It wasn't as if Jerry was sort of this young recruit coming to work for you as a peer, right?
No, that's
and so
right.
it didn't make sense to bring somebody in as a teammate that felt junior to you, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, a much younger person that needed an apprenticeship in a lot of areas, not just real estate.
Right, he was trying to learn the business of real estate.
Yeah,
but
exactly. But Jerry was a natural because he had all the business experience behind him.
Yeah.
He's the one I mentored the most.
Well, because he also had the biggest ears.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Nothing personal.
Not really.
Jerry.
Nothing
No.
personal, Jerry. But for real, I mean, looking back and knowing what I know now, I mean, Jerry was a sponge. He wanted to absorb what you were giving him, and
Yes.
and did you see that as how did you see that?
I agree. Well, it worked really well because that gave us the freedom to kind of live a life outside of working every day from sunrise to sunset. So if somebody wanted to take off somewhere, there was enough trust between us that you could take off and the other person would cover your business.
Right.
And so that partnership worked really well.
Yes.
And so but I didn't know squat about real estate. I think one of my attributes where I've had success is I do listen. I'm a patient guy.
Yeah.
I really am.
Oh,
very
we know
patient. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so I think that's it was all interesting stuff. I'm an artist, but I was also a math minor. Mm-hmm. So I've got math and science and all this stuff, and yet I like to be creative at the same time.
I want to go down that path here for a second, but I jokingly talk about what I call my two dads, right? Which is a sitcom, a TV sitcom, but also, that you guys were so different. People often say to me like, "Oh, Amanda, you have this sort of, extroversion, and then you're really good with people and patient. The business is a hybrid of some of that." And I often attribute both of you to sort of bringing me to those wells differently. For my dad, he was a real people person, a real extrovert. He was involved. He got on boards. He enjoyed doing, committee work and liked to attend events and always wanted to. Joe DiVito was working to get to the social event and to get to the happy hour, to get to the party, the life of the party. And there was this way you drew attention in a room. You always could walk in a room and command the room. And that was those were the things I felt like I learned from you, in addition to the fact that you were a driver, a go-getter, a detail-oriented person. Everything had a place, everything in its place. And then Jerry, on the other hand, you were just this soft, religious, kind-hearted family man. Not that you weren't, but that Jerry just had this different edge. You were analytical, you saw things differently, you reflected things back to me in a different way. Yep. Which was interesting. And so you had this patience, this artful eye. You did a lot of the IT stuff around here, which for 17 years together in partnership, that was one of the reasons I wanted to bring you. I felt like this dynamic was rare. The dynamic had longevity, which many don't. And especially now, I feel like people are much less patient in the business than they used to be. They leave brokerages more quickly. They leave partnerships more quickly. Things just, are faster and dissolve more quickly. And so for me, there was this longevity to the relationship that the three of us had. You guys were together 18 or 19 years, and then I was right behind you in the business. Right. So we ran our business together 17 years. Subsequently, you and I had another 2 years together after Dad left. But 17 years together is sort of this trio. And I'll digress just one more place, which was that the three-person partnership was dynamic. It was interesting. It was triangulated in a way that I felt like was very healthy in the business. It was like if he couldn't cover for you, I could. It wasn't so static that if he was leaving, you were to carry all the weight or whatever. So we could kind of triangulate the work, triangulate the coverage, and then, of course, we were three very different people.
Yeah, the thoughts.
And so the thought leadership amongst the three of us was very different. And so in some ways, people want to get into partnership with like-minded folks. But I actually challenged that in some ways this really dynamic, different group brought this thought leadership that was different and interesting. But one of the things we did that sort of just stays with me was the stats. I want to talk about our journey of statistics and why it was so important and why you think that's such an anchor to the real estate business and to really any business, knowing your numbers, right? You guys were both very passionate about it. I have a synthetic passion for stats, one that I know needs to exist, and it's it's something that's a part of my business, but not the way it was for you. So talk a little bit about statistics and why it's important for entrepreneurs to know their number and how you guys came to follow those and what that looked like.
Well, you said it, that the entrepreneur needs to know their numbers. We're the professional. But Jerry's the one that said, you should take this on the road, Joe. And he's the one that kind of encouraged me all along, again, to go ahead and do more with the stats. And we didn't do as much as we could have done, but we could have done more. But ironically, we're sitting here for a podcast.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember when I came back from...
Every time we go to a convention, though, it was like, okay, Joe's back from a convention.
What are we going to do now?
We got to do this, try something else here or there. But
but it was Howard Britton. Howard Britton said, podcasting is where it's at.
I mean, do you even remember what year that was?
Oh, that was at least 25 years ago, at least. Yeah. And I came back and I shared that with you guys. Yeah. You guys were saying, no way, no, we're not doing that.
I do think we tried it, actually.
Oh, yeah, it's still up on YouTube.
Oh, yeah,
There's a whole bunch of them up on YouTube.
All right,
is that right?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to go to the archives, you can find Howard Britton's advice there in Joe DiVito's old podcast.
We were pioneers putting stuff up.
And by the way, for whatever it's worth, there is a way for people to receive our stats now. That if somebody wants to be subscribed to that, they can let us know, and we'll get them on the list. But stats, the benefit of numbers and focus, Joe.
Yes.
Back on the topic.
Yes. No, well, again, it's so important. It isn't even funny, and most people in real estate had no idea.
What were you doing, and what were the four? Do you remember? What were the four?
I have to admit, a lot of stuff has gone bye-bye.
Yeah.
But, the four things were inventory, number of sales, how long they're on the market, and at what price. Okay, I mean, those four areas, and each of them is very critical. And knowing them, it just makes you a better realtor because, we're supposed to be professionals, and that's what it's all about.
What it does is not only give you, that you try and understand the market, where it's going, so that gives you a confidence that you have so that when you go in front of a client or a new client or existing client, you have to read them first. If they're an engineer, if they're, detailed, data-oriented people, you're at home. He's down there putting the numbers out, and they're loving every minute. If they're a big picture guy or gal, and you want to develop that. Your business, you got the confidence, but then you have to get them to think that you get them to believe that you are the professional.
Right.
So when you know your business, it's like, wow, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So it's the approach is either really detailed with an analytical type personality, but if it's a more big picture personality, you just give them the big picture, but you drop all this in so that you get the credibility to be the expert in this, so that they say, wow, this person, and you have mastered. Personally, I've watched you so many times. You have really mastered that. You go in and people look at you and like, oh, okay. But by the time you spend a half hour even with them, they're just staring at you. Okay, what do we do now? And you're in control.
Yeah.
So, and that's where it is. And then you just, then once you establish that relationship and that credibility, you just back off and then you listen. That's where the listening comes in, and you really want them to. You're again so good at it. Really,
this is my two dads.
They really feel that you're helping them.
Yeah.
Because you've listened to their personal situations, whether it's a bad thing like a divorce situation or it's they're just moving, the kids are growing and they need a bigger place. They get a feeling that you really are listening to them and you're going to help them. So then that just leads to success.
Yeah.
Because they have the confidence in you.
Yep. The stats we tied into a consultation book. And the consultation book was like nothing anybody was doing in the business at the time. So I'm curious, do you remember what that was born out of or how that began? And what was the purpose of the consultation book for you?
Well, Jerry just summarized it. Here you're walking into this person's home, a complete stranger in many cases, okay? Right. And they don't know you and you don't know them. And this is the way of telling them who I am. I mean, one of my lines was, I'll put my credentials up against anybody. And so you had to kind of explain the credentials to them as well, again, and tell them what percentage of the agents had this credential, Buyer brokerage, 3% of the people had it. It's just like staggering in the beginning. I don't know what that number is today, but 25 years ago. And so that was a way of opening the door, from our soul into them.
Right.
And the stats were just part of it.
And you were a natural connector.
Natural connection.
And so there was a connection that happened there, that you brought in information, you shared about who you were, you brought them some market data, left them
people persons.
Yeah. You left them with information. You opened up your soul to them, right? Mm-hmm. And then born of that is this ability for them to connect to you. And I think that's where that's the magic, right? Mm-hmm. The consultation with preparation, with good information, with good data, together with caring, all of a sudden you've got yourself a formula for success.
Yep.
If I could ask you each just one timeless piece of advice that you would give a young person or a new person entering into a new entrepreneurial endeavor, what would it be?
Besides know your stats?
That's tactical, right?
Yeah, well, persistency and consistency, I think, would be the main ingredients for me, especially that young person that really doesn't know anything.
To just stay after it.
Stay after it, yeah, exactly, and learn. Be a sponge, like Jerry was a sponge.
Right. But the other thing is really get a mentor. Really find somebody that you admire, it makes it easier if you like them.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes a leader in a particular field is a really obnoxious person, and you can learn from them, but it's not as much fun as if you really like the person. So if it's someone that hasn't done it before, try it. Go approach them and say, hey, I really admire what you're doing, and I think, you could really help me, and in return, I could probably help you grow your business or whatever. So, get help. And real estate is really a fun thing, because once you get a good grasp on what's going on, when you go in social event, you go to a party, you go to any kind of meeting, people like to talk about what a house is worth. They like to talk about, look at all the TV shows that are all about rebuilding houses and selling houses and selling New York and Vegas. And there's a plethora of that stuff out there. And so it's a really easy thing, fun thing to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then once you establish yourself in those environments, then people like you have been so successful at doing is they just think of you as that source. Mm-hmm. It's really a fun way to make a living. It gets frustrating and sometimes, but overall it's really a great, great career.
Do you guys remember when I became a coach?
Well, I was just actually going to ask you, I was just about to go there, which is that there is this arc of your business, your life and your business, that at some point, the mentee becomes the mentor. I wanted to go there because I do think it's curious for me that eventually over time the mentee becomes the mentor, and there's, what I wonder, and you've said this a lot in your career, Dad, is that you got to a place where it was lonely at the top. You become the top producer, you become the number one agent, you become the standard, the gold standard of the business. And I wondered, how did that feel? And where did you find places to continue to stretch yourself? And so the coaching might have been one of those, but you found a stretch where?
Oh, that's a good question. It might actually be Howard Britton, Richard Robbins.
You actually hired a professional coach at that point. What you're talking about is moving from mastery in your business to hiring a professional coach.
Yeah, but the stretching. Mm-hmm. Where the stretching came from, it came from those guys.
But what did they offer you?
Oh, no, just to improve myself.
And there were other top producers there, yeah?
Oh, there were other top producers there. Well, but, the whole thing, it's kind of, I dreamt about this last night. When I started in this business, I didn't know squat either, okay? And I came to RE/MAX. It was RE/MAX West at the time. And there were top producers, Bob Selecki. Remember the name? Bob Selecki. Yeah. He wasn't in our office, but he was always the top producer. And there were a whole bunch of other people in our office. Tim Clark. You remember Tim Clark?
Well, there were a lot of top producers here throughout the years.
There were a lot of top producers here. And, I was just the nothing, and my goal was if they could do it, I could do it.
Yes.
Then the stretching actually came from Howard Britton, Richard Robbins, not so much Richard Robbins because I was already into it by then. I was a top producer by then.
Oh, but he offered you a coaching opportunity.
But then he offered me a coaching opportunity. And, Jerry said the words that I have said in the past, everybody needs a mentor. So when you ask that one question, what would you recommend? Everybody needs a mentor.
Sure.
You got to find somebody, as Jerry had said, you can trust and that you like and you look up to and is a professional. But I think it came from those two guys, if you will.
The business is one of change.
Yep.
And what was some of, looking back now, what was some of the biggest changes that you felt like the market experienced, and did it end up being good or bad, or can you think of a change?
When Zillow first came around, remember I can't remember his name right now, the guy who started Zillow. We're going to put real estate agents out of business, basically. Everything's going to be online, and you will not need, but we always in our mind, like, how would you buy a house and not actually see it, just see it online? Well, it does happen, but not the norm. And again, buying a condo in a resort town, that's one thing. But when you buy a home or a family or something, it's a personal business. It's still, I don't know if it's a psychiatric. I mean, it's psychologists and psychiatrists. They're going to be around forever. You can't just go online, and you need that human interaction. But that, and then I used to worry, and when I first got in back, there used to be a lady called 4% Bonnie, and that was the name of her real estate company. Yeah. And she charged 4%. And again, all these antitrust things, and you're not supposed to talk percentages. And
but she could name her company her commission, right?
But she's talking to the public, not to other people.
I see.
And so I was like, wow, it's there's going to be all this discounting, commission stuff, and it always works out. Yeah, you lose some occasionally, but if you provide value, people are willing to pay it. That's why there are Lexuses and Teslas and all these cars, because people see value in spending more money on something than just getting a better deal. That used to be till I kind of got a feel for it. I used to think, well, this is going to be, maybe this isn't a great career, because all of a sudden you're going to have trouble making money. But
against 4% Bonnie, you were going to, yeah.
But then the first time that they get a showing, and it's like they get a sign call. Oh well, I'm sending someone over to look at your house. You let them in, and she's not there. She doesn't provide the service. So people appreciate that.
The .com bust was another one.
Yeah.
The market failure, what they call it, in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
The Great Recession, right?
The semi-Great Recession.
But, I mean, that really did hammer the real estate market. And do you remember what...
But remember, you adapted. I mean, it was hard, but all the short sales and all that other stuff we learned a whole new trade.
Right, right.
And you really, hopefully, you don't have to use it in the future, but you never know.
Another certificate, another professional designation.
Right, and so the takeaway in some ways is that, well, the market's going to, if there's one thing that's for sure, the market is going to change.
Right.
Yeah. The business is going to change. In that there is this survival of the fittest, essentially, and whoever is there to hustle and to do the things that need done, they will survive that.
By the way, the founder of Zillow came back 2-3 years later.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I don't know what those guys are doing, talking about the real estate professional, but they must do a damn good job of it.
Well, I think there was a realization he wasn't going to put the real estate agent out of business.
Exactly, exactly.
But that's also life, too. I mean, life, everything we're talking about in relation to this industry, it's also in life. I mean, talk about change in society. I mean, these phones, everything, technology has changed so much, and it's just, you got to adapt and just be at peace with it.
And now you have another one right now, the Department of Justice lawsuit and the new regulations.
Yeah.
And I believe that within 3 years, we'll be back to the old standards.
Or there'll be a new path forward and it'll be okay, is the other part of that.
Right.
I don't know that it goes back the way it was, but it'll go the way it goes, and the water will find its path of least resistance. The river will find its way.
Yes.
And so I do believe that, too. It's interesting talking, so you dip into, like, life here, and it makes me think, there was a place in your life where you start to analyze, like, how's enough enough? How do I keep from burnout? And so I wonder, like, how do you get compelled to a place where, like, you've either done enough or you have enough? And what does that look like? And then how did you avoid burnout throughout your career? And you can answer it any way you like.
The burnout was easy for me because there was no burnout. You know, people told me, oh, you're going to burn out, you know, again in 3 years. Jim Peterson, he was one of them, you know. Oh, you'll burn out, you know. I was driven.
Just internally driven, so much so.
Internally and externally. I was driven, and there was no burnout for me. I thoroughly enjoyed what Jerry had said earlier, thoroughly enjoyed what I did and how I did it and why I did it. And when is enough enough? That's a tough question, because you get to a point and all of a sudden you start figuring out, well, what would it really take for me to retire? Then you realize, you know, when enough is enough. But until you get to that point where you want to back out, you know, I was driven.
Yes.
And I never burned out because it was fun. I just, there were bad days that, yeah, it was hard, and I didn't maybe want to feel like going and driving 4 hours up to show something and mountains or something like that. But I enjoyed it. I just really, it's a good job. I liked it. I mean, it's a fun job. When I said earlier, like everybody likes to talk about, I'm one of those people. I mean, I would, even as a kid back in New York, when I was a young 20-year-old kid or something, you know, we go to open houses, you know, and say, oh, let's go look, this place is open. And just, it's fun to go look at. I just always liked it.
Right, so when you're doing what you love.
Doing it, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
It never really,
Like
you got tired sometimes when all of a sudden, more so when everybody was out of town and I was the only one left. One day I did 20-something showings. You know, that was a lot. That was a tough day. But, you know, I got to the point where physically I just, a little more, I'm an easygoing, laid-back guy, and it's like, all right, I'm just going to relax a little bit. And so and the money there was enough money there for the lifestyle that we live, and that's enough's enough, and, you know.
Yeah. One of the beauties of the business is you go to work, and then you see you get something done. You have a couple, a family, a single, whatever it is, who's happier than happy because they have their new home.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, that is just an absolutely fantastic feeling.
Yes, the reward.
The gratitude.
Yeah, the reward. Well, I'm curious with this sort of final question, which was, you know, you guys made an impact on so many people. You know, when you think about the families you've served, the business we built, the path or your journey through real estate, you know, looking back, would you have done anything differently?
Looking back, no, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think we were ahead of our time. You know, I was one of the first ones that had a website. People would come to me and say, hey, do I need a website? I'd say, oh, yeah, you better get on this, you know. I mean, we were ahead of ourselves in so many areas, you know, it wasn't even funny. I mean, we were the guys that were pioneering. We did it, and we did it right. And I have no regrets, and I wouldn't change a thing.
I was about 50 years old when I started working with Joe. And so, you know, got me up into the 70s. And because I remember when we first started, I just shadowed him for a while.
9 months a year.
I was going to say a long time, as I remember.
I didn't even have my license. Yeah. I come in a couple of different days a week, and I'd say, hey, Joe. And I really didn't know if I wanted to do this or not. But I liked it because it was always attractive to me. And I did come from the East Coast, where one of the things I like about here is you can be considered a professional here as a real estate agent and a broker even more so. Back East, you're like
like a chauffeur.
I don't want to disparage car salesmen, but used car salesmen on West Colfax or something, you know. But you know, you're more of a commodity back there, and you don't get the respect that you do out here.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder out here because you do the job of the attorneys that they do back east.
Right.
So the real estate agents back east just kind of show houses and then turn it over to the lawyers. But so it was a more prestigious kind of. It makes you feel good. You're doing a more professional kind of job. So regretting, I would have liked to probably got it into it a little bit earlier even, because it was, it just, time ran out.
Time ran out. I did say it was last question, but this will be my last question, which is, what were the things that you did, but really financially, I guess I mean preparation financially, to be able to exit the business? Because as an entrepreneur, a lot of times people make money and they run their business, but they forget to prepare, they forget to put away. So do you remember, what did you do in preparation?
I started years ago. I mean, I don't know exactly what year it was, but I would guess 97, 98. I opened a 401k. And one of my regrets, speaking of regrets, is when the Roth IRA came out.
Yes.
I don't remember what year it was, but I'm going to guess somewhere around 2007, 8, 9. I asked my accountant, should I open one of these? No, you don't need that. And that's one of my biggest regrets.
Well, sure, yeah.
Because all that money could have been accumulating tax-free. There were years I went out and borrowed the money to fund my 401k.
Your SEP IRA. You had a self-employment pension at the time.
Right. That's what it was with New Direction.
But then you started doing self-directed loans.
Yes. Well, when I got into real estate, I got out of real estate. So I was in real estate. On our honeymoon, we bought 10 acres of land up in the upper Michigan, which I'm about to sell.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
My daughter said I had to clean up my estate.
Well, there's a lesson there. We'll get an estate attorney in here soon.
That happened years ago, and I always encourage you to do the same. And, of course, Jerry and everybody that was with me.
I will say, though, the difference for me was that while I was in real estate, I continued in real estate.
Yes.
The mistake would have been not buying along the way. And I did buy a property a year or so along the way, and that really created a lot of a fluffy nest, if you will. It gave me a lot of flexibility to do things I wanted to do or to invest in different things. And then you taught me how to be a hard money lender.
Yes.
And that was a lot of fun.
Yes. And that's taken me into my exit strategy. Mm-hmm. I still have like 5 loans, going back several years. Mm. And it's been very, very, very lucrative and very, very, very good.
Yeah. And preparation for you, Jerry?
I mainly just made sure that I got rid of all debt, okay? Mm. I never liked to be too much in debt, but when things come along, you just, you got to go in debt sometime. Yeah. So get rid of all debt, and we live very simply. So, and then, we just put money away, invested some in the stocks market and stuff like that. And I'm learning crypto now, too.
Yeah, I think crypto's going to be big. So
crypto. I have a son that, Jeremy, our oldest boy, who is an IT guy. And he had I won't digress too much, but he had a client years ago. And this client got ransomware on his computer system. He puts systems together, and he didn't put this one together. But the client came to him. He says, "I've got this ransomware, and I can't get in, and they're blackmailing me to release so I can get into my systems. I got to pay them, and they want bitcoins." Ah. And I said, "Well, how many bitcoins?" And he says, "Well, they want 8 bitcoins." At the time, bitcoins were $600. So he got paid like $4,800 for 8 bitcoins. So Jeremy, that's one of his regrets, that he didn't buy an extra 8 for himself at that time.
Oh, that's right.
So anyway.
Because Bitcoin's what now? 2,000?
It's 100,000. 100K. Right now,
100K
one
for
Bitcoin.
one Bitcoin.
They passed 100K a week ago. Yeah.
I must have bought Bitcoin at 2,000, which I think I subsequently sold to. So I don't think I have those Bitcoins anymore.
Yeah. So, anyways, but yeah, I just, we're very comfortable and debt free and all that, and just got enough money to take care of everything, and I got a lot of kids and a lot of grandkids, and so we have just enjoying that.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for the years together and for coming to share just a little piece of our partnership on the podcast here. And we love you and appreciate you very much, and couldn't have done it without you. And it was a lot of fun.
Yep,
a lot of fun on the journey.
Thank you, and we feel the same way.
Yeah.